Welcome to the after show of the first ever bonus show to NETLORE, I guess, because we just decided to do an extra show after recording the last one.
Well, this was just like an impromptu thing. Bernie had something. You want to talk about a current event. I mean, I'm sure it's in the title of the video, so I don't know why I'm being coy about it, right?
It happened 8 hours ago. Breaking. A federal judge has decided in favor of 4 publishers in the long-awaited copyright case, Hatchet versus the Internet Archive. Basically, the Internet Archive has just had a huge loss against it in court on the specific subject of digital libraries and the copyright of books. And I think,
right.
I mean,
I'm only a little bit aware of this. Okay, so this is what, first of all, let me just make something perfectly clear. If you are opposing the Internet Archive, you are my enemy. You are my blood sworn enemy, and we will be enemies for life.
Because
fuck you, unironically.
Genuinely, it is kind of disgusting.
I mean, yeah, I truly consider an archive to be like the backbone of the internet. It is truly so important. It's probably like, I would actually say, if you'd asked me even before this, it's like the most important site on the internet. Yeah. People coming after it. I'm a little worried about this, but I don't fully understand a lot of the details.
Look, we're going to go through the whole story.
So this is a ruling against the digital library. I don't understand how is that going to affect their other libraries. It's bad either way. I'm not saying, oh, maybe it's okay, it's good. It's definitely bad either way. I'm really upset about it, but I just don't know exactly what the consequences are going to be. They said they're going to appeal. They said it's going to not be like, we'll see what happens. But
I just want to point out, books as a medium, we're talking about the digitalization of books, and we're now able to, when you think about the idea of scarcity and the exact limitations of how many copies something should be made, when a book is digitized, theoretically, you can make infinite copies of it. It's the same question of piracy with video games. If you make 100 copies of a video game, if you just copy it over and over and over, is that really losing 60 times 100 sales? Are they really losing $60,000 if you copy it over and over?
Well, it's just so asinine to me because it's like, to my understanding, the problem is that, it's like, as you're explaining, it's a digital library, so any amount of people can check out a book, and they're saying that's a problem. Where it's like, okay, so it's fine that people are reading your book for free. It's just they have to do it through a real library, and they have to jump through all the hoops of I don't understand why they think this is going to be such a major.
It's so ridiculous because the thing that people realized with gaming and with piracy in video games is that you're not losing sales per se by having someone read the book in a digital library. This isn't even piracy, it's just a digital library. You are encouraging someone who probably cannot afford to read that book, especially just can't afford to get the book. They can't afford to preview the book. They can't afford to cite the book where all this information is locked away. And because this is already a lot more important than video games, because so much information is locked away in these books that should be digitized and should be available to other people. But you're limiting the ability for people in people of lower income, people who can't afford, who don't have a good library in their area, people in other countries that don't have the same level of public libraries or the ability to buy physical books or even the money to afford digital books. And then you're preventing them access from this under the guise of lost sales and to protect copyright, which is it's kind of insane because the whole premise of digitizing a book theoretically is that you can make infinite copies of it. But when you think about in that sense, what have publishers done? They've turned that process into being able to make more and more money off. They make more money probably off these electronic sales and forcing people to only be able to read them in this specific app or this specific instance and making it seem more scarce than it is, despite that being kind of the complete opposite of what the process should be. The internet was supposed to make information more accessible. Why are they locking it away like this? And then, I don't know, basically the logic of the Internet Archive's library was that if they had a book in their warehouse, it correlated to a book you could borrow on their digital library. So you could borrow the book for a certain amount of time, and then no one else could borrow that book until your time was done. In that sense, they recreated the scarcity of a library. Every single copy you could borrow correlated to a physical book. And that was what this lawsuit sought to test. Now, we're going to go into...
That's already going above and beyond, in my personal opinion. The fact that they're even doing that. The whole point of the internet is, you can it's text, you can copy, paste it, share it. I understand there's intellectual copyright crap, but like I was saying earlier, so you're fine with a physical library. It's not the act of people reading your book for free. It's just it's really just corporate money grubbing being described
100%.
Disguised as any of this stuff. And it is literally ableist, it is literally classist, it is literally elitist, but more importantly, it's fucking annoying. It's pissing me off over here.
If someone enjoys a book that much, they're going to purchase it to support the creators. That's what happens with video games. That's the problem with these theoretical sales. They don't account for that.
It's funny, the people who are actually like upset about this, I don't want to like rail. I was going to say, if you are actually supporting of this lawsuit, you're a fucking idiot. But I seriously, how many people in our audience are actually going to be dumb enough to be like supporting this? So I don't want to yell at the audience, the imaginary audience too much, but I will just say it's like completely.
Well, we'll get into someone who does really quick. But
I'm sure there's some people. I was just going to say yes, exactly. Who are the kind of people who are actually getting mad about this? Because okay, the big name authors. There's a couple of counterexamples. I know Neil Gaiman was being a dumbass about this, but for the most part, the really big famous authors they're not going to be bothered. They're not going to be threatened by the Internet Archive, and the really tiny obscure authors would be more than happy to have anyone reading their work. So it's really just this mid-range of small-time delusional authors who actually think that this is somehow going to affect their bottom line in a significant way, when all it would ever do is help them, but they're too stupid to realize that.
Exactly. And I've had this pains me specific too, because I write a lot of videos citing a lot of books, and there are a lot of books that I've read through the Internet Archive that I've just went out and sought and purchased, like the digital versions, not physically, just because I don't have a lot of places to put physical books, but I have sought out and like purchased books I really enjoyed. And secondly, it's a great way to find resources for information, to be able to preview them without having to physically travel to a library or request that they buy one, or just fucking buy an entire book. I have a limited amount of budget, okay? Like, obviously, I can't just go out and buy every book and then find out that this source fucking sucks. And that was another great benefit of it. It improved people's accessibility to information. It made it easier to research subjects that were previously kind of locked inside these very niche books you couldn't really get a good barometer for, of the level of intricacy or just the sophistication of like the author's understanding of the subject matter, just stuff like that. It served a very vital role, in my opinion, how the internet should be, which is, why are we locking things behind in this way? And I don't know, this is slightly off tangent. I'm fucking ranting, but slightly off topic. But I think also to something someone in the comics industry told me. I have a friend who works in the comics industry, the indie comics industry, and they don't make a lot of money off book sales. And obviously that trend specifically is probably just for graphic novels and stuff. But they told me that the most sales they get, and to the point where it's like, it does turn like a lot of profit, is digital sales using something like itch.io or Gumroad, selling books through there. And the reason why is because even though they're selling this digital copy that you could just download and just send to someone else, right? You could just do that. It's because if they like it so much, they want to support the author. Corporations' understanding of consumers is very, very black and white. They don't understand, I guess, by the nature of the difference between big like name authors and big name publishers and the online relationship. And even, I don't know, but it's with a lot of gaming companies, they also see that trend too. I think Steam was it Steam or was it movies? No, it was movies and gaming, I think, had this realization, which is people are going to buy things that they pirate if they enjoy it that much.
Right. You don't have to preach to me. I'm a pirate Chad myself. I know all about this. But even taking it into account, like I'm trying to look at this whole situation from the lens of a non-pirate, I still think you should be against this lawsuit. You should be pro the free spread of information and proliferation of books like this online. Like, I don't know. This is actually like something kind of like important. Yeah, like the ability to access these like books and stuff. It's not just like a silly meme we're spreading around. It's
no, because you see, you're completely right. You're on the right, because what you're saying actually perfectly coincides with how this whole thing started, which kind of fucked up. Because do you remember there was an inciting incident, and the inciting incident is insane that is what they're punishing, because it is a complete lack of empathy on the part of book publishers. It is so insane. It's like to completely ignore the broader context of it, to try to destroy this thing you think is threatening your market is so fucking stupid and cruel.
I mean, I really can't overstate how much I think the Internet Archive is important. It needs to be protected. It needs special exemptions. Like if we had like lawmakers and people in government who actually, knew anything about the internet or gave a shit about it at all, they would be like jumping out of their way to protect this important cultural thing, rather than, of course they're going to bend over backwards for any sort of, money interests or whatever. So I can't really be surprised it's happening, but it is very disappointing to see.
They should, honestly. There are very few issues I think I've ever seen with the Internet Archive. I'm sure someone in the comments can point out some shit, but
I'm sure there have been legitimate cases of things hosted on there that shouldn't have been on there, that have been requested to taken down, that have been taken down. But it's like they're going after like structural, legal, like foundational pillars that they're using to like, again, I was sort of saying this at the beginning, which is that like what's worst case scenario here is that like they take down all the libraries of books. Like that would be horrible, but like, are they going to stop there? Or are they going to start going after all the software archives and all the, the movie archives and all the video archives, just because, there is an insane, like, I think if the average corporate cunt knew about how much free stuff there was on Internet Archive, they'd all be going like apoplectic about, it's crazy.
100%.
So it's almost like it was like just a bad.
It's
like,
disgusting.
Unfortunate they even found out about this. These fucking book publishers who happily would have just continued going on without it, knowing about it.
So you want to know what happened. So the reason why they're cracking down is because of a specific rule change. And I mentioned before that this kind of digital library serves to help the people in society who need it the most. And why did they crack down? It's because the Internet Archive altered its rules in light of the pandemic in a national emergency library. So basically, and this is an article from NPR, March 26, 2020, concerns over the coronavirus have shuttered public and school libraries around the world, depriving their regular patrons of free access to the internet, shelter, and of course, books, just when many of them could use them the most. So because of this, the Internet Archive began offering a national emergency library. So it made 4 million books available online for free without the wait lists. So
the checking out process, right? Yeah, it's insane. They stepped up to do something incredible for the community when they needed it the most, and now they're getting punished for it. It is truly upsetting a situation when you really think about how just like they'll do anything. People will step over anything, any corporation. I'm sure it was mentioned in court, but like the fact that like doing societal good it doesn't even compare to the dangers of lost profits. It's like, oh no.
Literally, this is like physical libraries were shut down. I guess maybe these publishers, these authors, they were expecting a big payday. I don't know what they were thinking, but this article came out, this specific article, and because they praised it, guess what happens? Publishers, authors, 4 days later, follow-up article by NPR, condemn the National Emergency Library as piracy. So a ton of articles and publishers came out on Twitter talking about how disgusted they were with this decision. One of the most infamous people that would speak out in this would be Chuck Wendig. Now that is a person that we mentioned before, and it actually is something to point out because a lot of people are blaming him for stuff that maybe isn't true, but he's a Star Wars novelist and comic book writer and formerly worked for Marvel, and he also had some rather choice words for this decision by the Internet Archive, and these tweets have kind of become infamous. They're being posted a lot right now because of the verdict.
It should be mentioned, he's tried to walk back his things. A lot of people originally made statements saying how much they hated this Internet Archive decision. Now that this lawsuit's going on, they're trying to walk back like, oh, it's not my fault this is happening. But if you ever said anything bad about the Internet Archive, you're fucking human scum, and I will find you.
Unless there's a valid reason.
There's no valid reason. I don't accept the valid reasons. I won't. I told Bernie, I was like, we can't do this episode. I'm going to say something that's going to get our podcast banned. I'm going to say something, but I'm biting my tongue. Okay, I'm trying really hard to be chill.
And a lot of people did actually support these tweets. This tweet has in the archive version I'm looking at has 4,000 likes. He ended up privating his Twitter, but
well, if you don't know anything about the situation, obviously you want to be on the side of the small artist, the small author. You know what I mean? Without thinking critically about the situation. Yes, I don't want small artists to get fucked over, but like if you use your goddamn brain for 5 seconds, there's no way you could be against the Internet Archive here. Like it's impossible.
Yeah, there are very specific cases where I could see the argument being made. Other stuff is like it's a very nuanced conversation. If they were making nuanced points about how it is worth keeping in mind that this could affect, the sales of independent book publishers or people who just are struggling in writing, I would understand that. But that's not what was happening. Okay, this is what he said. Okay, dear NPR, hey, hi, this is a pirate website. It's not legit. What the fuck are you doing? Okay, libraries often offer ebooks, so please use those. Thanks. As there seem to be a lot of people confused about this, a website is giving away people's books for free is not a library, even though it calls itself one. It isn't even like a library. Libraries pay for their books. And given some people's oh boohoo for the author's attitude, I'll remind you that creative careers are far, far, far from lucrative. I've been very lucky. Many are not and live on the edge of making little to no money. Each sale matters. And that's true. It isn't a very lucrative career, but to then say, well, the difference between libraries and this website is that they don't pay for their books. Well, they did pay for their books. So I don't know what the argument there is, but so many are saying, but the Internet Archive is good, to which I say, maybe in a lot of ways, great, but regarding books, maybe not so much. And then he has a counter argument to the pandemic stuff. But we are all trapped in a pandemic. Just shut up and let the books go free. Except those books are a thin line between paying a mortgage and not for many authors. We can't eat exposure and can't get unemployment. Again, I want to know, how many sales do they think they are losing from people using the Internet Archive?
That's why they always make make this argument. Okay, that's why they will do it, because you can never prove them wrong. You can never quantify how many sales they've lost because of it.
These are theoretical sales, but we're talking about the pandemic. Okay, do you know how many authors were out of jobs? A lot of people were out of jobs, man.
Right. It would be one thing if you're like, hey, I have hard evidence that it proves that I lost out X amount of money because of the Internet Archive and I can't, pay my mortgage because of it. But it's just this speculative, I'm speculating on how much money I'm losing. I don't know. And they never was able to buy that. There's always been counter arguments about, I'm not saying you can eat off exposure, but like, when you get a huge amount of people checking out your work, they wouldn't have a good amount of them are going to be transitioning into paying customers. I mean, I don't even want me to say. It's just kind of obvious. It's been proven time and time again. I'm so tired of doing this like song and dance explaining, like, I'm not saying every case of piracy is always good or whatever, but I'm just so tired of seeing the same old hat arguments that you can't falsify, so it's like whatever.
These are very, very specific scenarios too. The reason why the Internet Archive did this, the stipulations he is pointing out were on the website before. The only reason they changed is because of the pandemic, which is insane to ignore that context and point out, well, what about
Right.
us?
They were already doing the digital checking out of books, which I honestly kind of think is stupid, but like, I get why they were doing it. And it's like, we temporarily suspended that because of a national emergency. And now it's like, well, they're getting, again, I still don't fully understand what the ramifications of this are going to be, but I hope they're not too severe. I hope they can appeal this decision.
Well, I'll say this, okay? I'll give Chuck Wendig this because to give some props, because as kind of dumb as this thread is, he has kind of been thrown into this as part of the lawsuit. Chuck Wendig has nothing to do with the lawsuit, okay? He has had books published by some of the companies involved with the lawsuit, is from what I can gather, but he's not actually involved with it. And he actually does not condone the lawsuit. He wrote an article about it called, No, I Am Not Suing the Internet Archive. And I'll read this very simply. Okay?
I was just going to say, in case we didn't make this clear, he was just one of the guys making dumb tweets. Like, there's no reason to go harass him over this.
He is the most remembered. There were a lot of people.
Yeah, he became the face of it, and a lot of people harassing him, so he had to make this whole statement or whatever, which is a little annoying that it's like, when you have people on your side acting stupid about it on Twitter, I don't know what to say.
I will say, because I did not know this until researching for this little after show, there's something very deeply, deeply saddening that the people many are turning to put a face on this is another artist, another author.
Right.
He did make a mistake, but the real villains at the end of this are the publishers. You need to be focusing on the real people who put this into place, and it isn't Chuck Wendig.
Right. That's what I was saying earlier. Like, don't bother him. Don't harass him on Twitter. It's just like you're not accomplishing anything by doing that. Like you said, if you can donate to Internet Archive. There's all sorts of things you can do that are way more productive than just. I mean, you could record a stupid podcast talking about it, for example.
And again, as he said in his thread, and I'll point this out again, he does support digital libraries. He did not understand that the Internet Archive was operating in the way that he suggested at first, and that is probably, I would imagine, the primary reason why he doesn't support this, because this lawsuit isn't just about that. That was I think the impetus for it, but it's about digital libraries as a whole. So he says, I am not involved in the publisher lawsuit against the Internet Archive. I am not leading the lawsuit. I did not inspire the lawsuit. I am not its ringleader or its Kickstarter. I did not influence the lawsuit. I have never been a part of it at all. I do have books published by 3 of those publishers, but I have never consulted with them on this. They are not taking orders from me. They have, as corporate entities, very little regard to me and do not listen to me at all.
We were saying this earlier. It's just all about profit, and people really do want to put a human face on this so they can get mad at someone and yell at someone in particular. But I don't know. It is really just a money thing at the end of the day, and that's the only way it's going to go away is if enough money goes into this problem. It's like you can prove that they're not losing money, or if you can raise a better legal defense or something.
Yeah. So just to be clear, he does not support the lawsuit. He says it in his article. He is not a part of the lawsuit. He's not in the legal documents, and he's just an idiot with a bad take. He still does have the base take of supporting digital libraries, but it is worth pointing out that people have kind of paraded him as the face of this. As much as he does suck, it's kind of cringe. He's not the guy that you should really be directing everything at. Direct it at the publishers if you are angry about this, because they're the ones that truly, don't attack the authors who are also, while they are sad, they were angry about it, they're also getting fucked over by the publishers. You're playing into their hands. Okay?
It's a tricky situation. I mean, part of me wants to just say, yeah, hey, now you can just pirate any book ever made by these publishers without feeling guilty about it. But then, yeah, like there are the middlemen. They're the middlemen. The actual artists, the authors are the ones kind of getting screwed over too. So it's not that simple. I mean, I wish it was that simple. I wish I could just make the situation go away, but it's one of those complicated, sticky situations. I'm sure if I even did even more research into it, I'd find it's even more complex and nuanced than I already think it is. But it's almost too depressing for me to think about. Like I said at the beginning, I almost couldn't record this one because I was like, I'm going to say something. Something's going to slip out that's not appropriate because it makes me upset. It makes me just the thought of anything happening at the Internet Archive as a whole. It's scary. It's actually scary. And it's like, the Internet Archive is too big to just back up. I mean, you can't just locally back up the Internet Archive. You know what I mean?
So the Authors Guild and the American Association of Publishers both released statements following the opening of the emergency library, condemning it, and the executive director of the Authors Guild would end up making a statement saying, all they've done is scan a lot of books and put them on the internet, which makes them no different from any other piracy site. If you can get anything that you want that's on the Internet Archive for free, why are you going to buy an ebook?
Here's a better question. If you wanted to pirate an ebook, why would you go to Internet Archive? There's plenty of other easy to find sites, which I don't need to name, that you could be using instead.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's pointless. It's not taking down the Internet Archive is not going to solve e-book piracy. If anything, what are you going to you're just going to research, there's a resurgence of actual piracy sites. You're going to drive people back to those. You know what I mean?
I think the biggest thing that you would have to demonstrate is that there is a significant loss actually happening for me to think that this is a real concern, that there is genuinely a huge loss in people not buying ebooks because it's on the Internet Archive. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know the industry that well. Okay, but I don't know.
I was just going to say, I agree that it's not even impossible to have, if you have a team of insanely good lawyers, I'm sure they could and have proven that some profits were definitely lost because some people out there read a book for free. But you would have to prove that it is causing most authors to go destitute to counterbalance the societal good. That should be a huge counterbalance, which I don't think is appropriately being weighted.
So in response, the Internet Archive would issue a statement, and I'll read some excerpts from this. One of the statements suggests that you've acquired your books illegally. Is that true? So we've already gone through that. Is the Internet Archive a library? Yes, the Internet Archive is a 501c3 nonprofit public charity and is recognized as a library by the government, if there's any concern there. What is the legal basis for the Internet Archive digital lending during normal times? So this is the actual legal basis for why they were able to do the digital library before. The concept and practice of controlled digital lending, CDL, has been around for about a decade. It is a lend-alike print system where the library loans out a digital version of a book it owns to one reader at a time, using the same technical protections that publishers use to prevent further redistribution. Now, I'll extend this, okay? If you are of the belief that piracy is really harmful to an industry like books, I can understand why you would be upset about this. But the Internet Archive, in its original state and in its typical usage, was not doing that. And it's so weird to fixate on this emergency response in a time where everyone is struggling. I get it. Maybe it's because it was in that same situation you were also struggling financially. I can get that. But just to disavow it as a piracy website, not acknowledge the human aspect of it.
I just can't accept. I can't take it. There's so few goddamn sites on the internet that aren't primarily first and foremost focused on squeezing every last nickel and dime out of the user. There's so few sites that are just about trying to make the world a better place. And this is one of the few. And it's we got to shut it down. We got to make sure they're not interfering with our profits. It's just God damn it. Stop ruining the fucking internet, please. It's already gotten so bad.
I feel a lot more empathetic if their approach to this wasn't so flagrantly disregarding the people that this move benefited. If they simply push the idea of this is a good thing, but we're also struggling too. And if you really do enjoy our works, then support our works.
The pandemic thing makes it, they need a special exemption. The government needs to step in and say, no, it's okay. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the government doesn't need to. It'd be better if they could just sort it out without having it even to be necessary in the first place, is what I should be saying.
I don't know. It just feels very wrong.
I'm trying not to be a doomer about this. I'm trying to be reasonable and even headed about it, but it is a little bit like, depressing. I don't know what you it's like. I really do want to empathize with the authors and stuff because it's not like they're completely 100% have 0 points whatsoever. But I'm not even saying there even is a single author out there who's starving to death because of this bullshit. But even if there was, it's still hard to
be clear too. The Internet Archive's National Emergency Library was not piracy. It was not giving you a copy of the book for unlimited use. It removed that you can only borrow this one at a time for a lot of books, but there was still a time limit on it. You could borrow it for only 2 weeks. It just made it so you borrowing the book wasn't exclusive to one user. Again, it sounds like a small detail, but it's a lot. It does mean a lot because I use the service. I don't own any of the books I borrowed. I didn't go in and screenshot every single one. Okay.
Right. I mean, you can just go to a regular library, buy a book, and Xerox every page. I mean, it's like, what are they going to do about it?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It's like, come on, why are you being such sticklers about this, for cripe's sake?
Do you know how many CDs my family, who were really poor and could not afford to buy all this shit, or movies, we would burn off the CDs at the library and using a computer, just burning it onto a new CD so we could have a copy of it? I don't know. There was no sale that was going to happen there. Okay, we were broke as fuck.
Right. That is another big thing where it's like, you can't even prove that it's most of these like missed library visit, like, oh, does that really equate to a lost sale? Like, no, it doesn't, because what were they, if it wasn't available at the library, does that mean that, oh, I guess I would have gone and immediately bought it? No, if they were going to immediately go and buy it, they wouldn't be looking in the library in the first place. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, yes,
exactly.
It's silly.
So there's the key differentiation, and this is the logic behind CDL and basically libraries, is that you're not owning the book. You have to return it. So the argument of every lost sale is a lost sale. If I sit there and read the book in the store, is that stealing? If I take a book out and I read it and I never buy it, is that stealing? No, it's not.
I think if you read a book and then you later remember that book, that's stealing.
It's not a lost sale. And especially in the context of the 2-week period, which I forgot to mention, which does add a lot. It is insane. But, I'm just circle jerking a bit right now. Anyways.
I mean, I don't know. It's like, I get the whole digital library thing and why it can't just quote unquote be piracy. But on the other hand, it's like, we don't live in 1900 anymore. We live in a world where we can freely duplicate information. And that's like a good thing. And
it is a great thing.
I don't want to go, I'm not trying to make this a political thing, but like, wouldn't it be cool if just books could just be free and it wasn't a big deal? Like, come on, man.
Exclusivity to information should not be commodified. That is probably one of the stupidest things that we do, that you can lock all of these studies and papers.
Isn't society fucking stupid enough? Do you really have to hold us down in the mud?
To make it so you need a certain level of wealth, a certain level of privilege to be able to become educated on a subject is so insane.
I mean, I said it earlier, but like, it is literally elitist and classist, but like, literally.
Again, if you're not fully convinced, here's some more stipulations from the Internet Archive, just to make it even more agreeable, in case you didn't already agree with it. Do libraries have authors opted out? Yes, we've had authors opt out. We anticipated this would happen as well and launched with clear instructions on how to opt out because we understand that authors and creators have been impacted by the same global pandemic that has shuttered libraries and left students without access to print books. So you could opt out of this.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up earlier, which is that like, if you are Chuck Wendig or just some guy, it doesn't even matter who, you're just some guy. If you're mad that your book's on there, just get your books off there. You don't have to make a whole systemic change to say this shouldn't be allowed. Just get your books off there. You don't have to ruin it for everyone. You know what I mean? Because yeah, like you said, I was going to mention this, but like, I'm sure they have provisions for that. These places, these companies and corporations bend over backwards. You don't even have to prove anything. You just submit a DMCA request or YouTube and they'll take the video down just because you say that it's infringing on your copyrights. Like, they're so happy to do that shit for you. You know what I mean? Like, it really shouldn't have been this big lawsuit. That's because it wasn't this wasn't about the individual author. This was about the publication studios, the big publication companies. They're the ones losing the profit. It's never been about the individual artist or author. And if you think that you're protecting the individual author because you support this lawsuit, you're rude. You got played by a big corporation and deal with it.
Congratulations. Everyone fucking loses except the corporations.
Right. If you're not like a shareholder on one of these 4 companies, then you lost. Everyone lost. The internet got worse.
The authors lost. Libraries lost. Students lost. The Internet Archive.
Everyone lost. I mean, not to sound melodramatic, but the collective IQ of the human race has been affected by this decision and it's gotten lower. It will be lower than it would have been in a different world. You know what I mean? Again, it's melodramatic, but it's basically true. You have to admit.
2 months later, on June 1st, 2020, Hachette Book Group, along with other publishers, including Penguin Random House, HarperCollins, and Wiley, filed a lawsuit against the Internet Archive for the National Emergency Library. The plaintiffs argue that the practice of the CDL was illegal and not protected by the doctrine of fair use. So, The lawsuit itself is about the National Emergency Library, but the precedent of it is very dangerous. So we've just outlined all the different stipulations. It's not just that they removed the restrictions on their digital library. You also had the 2-week imposed restriction, and you also had the ability to get the books removed. So when you think about it in that context, a lot of the decisions that would impact, I think, a regular digital library and the freedom of information, because I think the National Emergency Library should be legal personally, but it's very concerning because the line is getting pushed closer and closer in the corporation's favor.
Right. And here's the thing, they will win these little battles and wrestle control away from, nonprofits and the internet at large. And it's so hard to get that back once these decisions have been decided, which I know that sounded stupid, but you know what I mean? Once this shit is precedent, it's so hard for it to go back. That's why these decisions really, really, really matter.
So now it is time to go to today. So it has been 3 years. So obviously we're skipping over a lot of the nitty gritty of the arguments because today the Internet Archive has lost its fight to scan and lend ebooks like a library. And this is from The Verge. And this was again earlier today. A federal judge has ruled against the Internet Archive in Hatchet v. Internet Archive, a lawsuit brought against it by 4 book publishers, deciding that the website does not have the right to scan books and lend them out like a library. The judge decided that the Internet Archive had done nothing more than create derivative works, and so would have needed authorization from the book's copyright holders, the publishers, before lending them out through its National Emergency Library program. The Internet Archive says it will appeal. Today's lower court decision in Hatchet v. Internet Archive is a blow to all libraries and communities we serve. So this judge had already been skeptical of the Internet Archive before, so there are articles from 5 days ago, actually, about a hearing on the parties' cross motions for summary judgment. Now, he seemed skeptical that there were sufficient laws and basis to support the archive's scanning and lending of print library books under a legally untested protocol known as controlled digital lending. So again, this decision has the possibility to unwork that entire concept that was not just being tested by the Internet Archive, but every single digital library. It's interesting that he says that because fair use was what previously protected. The concept behind the idea was based on the Authors Guild versus an offshoot of Google Books. So it was founded in 2008 and it was a digital library to provide long-term preservation and access to public domain and in-copyright content from a variety of sources, including Google, the Internet Archive, Microsoft, and some in-house institution. This is the precedent. The Electronic Frontier Foundation argued in this case that the copying of books for a database like their library was a clear case of fair use and obviously in the public interest. Now keep that in mind, okay? On October 10th, 2012, the courts agreed and granted a summary judgment for Hathy Trust. So to sum up his ruling, the judge declared that he could not imagine a definition of fair use that would not encompass the transformative uses made by the HDL. The court paid close attention to public interest in the project, recognizing it actually served the purposes of copyright to promote the progress of science and useful arts. People don't remember this. Copyright was not intended to just make profit. It was intended to help artists profit from their work to hopefully encourage culture to keep evolving.
Right. It wasn't supposed to last for 100 fucking years,
No.
plus however many because of fucking Mickey Mouse bullshit. That's a whole separate thing, but it is insane how bad it's fucking warped.
People don't remember this, but the whole point was to facilitate more art. It's really interesting that they made that decision because citing EFF's brief, the court recognized that the project efforts helped rather than hindered access to creative works. That public benefit, the court said, meant that the HDL supported the underlying rationale of copyright law. That precedent is important because how do you hear that and then contradict it for the Internet Archive? Now, to be fair, I think this is not the end all be all. They can appeal it and they are going to, right?
Right. That's why I didn't want to be too much of a doomer because I don't know if this is necessarily, this one decision isn't going to end the Internet Archive isn't shutting down. But at the same time, I don't want to minimize it because it is bad. Anything that remotely against the Internet Archive, big bad decision in my book. But at the same time, I don't want to be a complete doomer without, paying a fair dues to what actually is the reasonable expectations of consequences.
So this is what the judge in the Hatchet versus Internet Archive case said. In his ruling, he considered whether the Internet Archive was operating under the principle of fair use. Fair use considers whether using a copyrighted work is good for the the public how much it'll impact the copyright holder and how much of the work has been copied and whether the use has transformed a copyrighted thing into something new. But the judge wrote that any alleged benefits from the Internet Archive's library cannot outweigh the market harm to the publishers, declaring that there is nothing transformative about their copying and unauthorized lending, and that copying these books doesn't provide criticism, commentary, or information about them. So he does stipulate a difference between them and Google Books. He notes that the Google Books use was found transformative because it creates a searchable database instead of simply publishing copies of the book on the internet. So in Google Books, if you search up a word in their library, you can find the page it's on, it'll highlight it, you'll see previews of the book where you'll get access to it. Sometimes not the entire book is available on the site, but it's a good way to read portions of it and see if the book you're talking about has something very relevant. You know, there are a lot of obscure incidents that are only discussed in specific, like general subject matter books that you don't really know is in there. So it's very useful. The judge also dismissed arguments that the Internet Archive might have theoretically have helped publishers sell more copies of their books because there was no direct evidence, and it was irrelevant that the Internet Archive had published its own copies of the books before making copies of it for its online audience. According to data obtained during the trial, the Internet Archive currently hosts around 70,000 ebook borrows a day. So there was no direct evidence that they were helping sell more copies, but is there direct evidence that they were actually taking sales? Again, how do you differentiate that from borrowing a book at a library or just reading it in a store? Are these illegal? Really?
Right. It's definitely a fucked situation how they want to keep information like not free. Like, remember, think about what's his face, the fucking Aaron Swartz, that like Reddit founder guy who all he did was he wanted to make like JSTOR academic journal stuff be easily publicly available, you know, for anyone. And then they're like, oh, we're going to send you to fucking 35 years of prison for trying to do that. So he killed himself. And it's like, come on. Can't we just have a society that isn't completely fucked up? Is that really too much to ask? Come on, guys.
I was planning on bringing that up actually to kind of near the end of this, because it is very tragic and dark what happened to him. And people don't, I think, acknowledge that as much because it was all motivated by greed. And that's kind of why I was emphasizing so much of this commodification of information is if you can't afford to go to a university or an institution that has access to these resources, you don't get to have this information. You don't get to have this knowledge. And that to me is really weird because we're talking about what should be, what is better for us as a species? What is better for us as a society? You know, what will facilitate more people to become interested in researching subject matters? What is going to encourage art, encourage culture?
Right. We're not even talking about like a library of every movie available. We're talking about academic, you know, studies and like books, you know, these are the kinds of things like this is why libraries fucking exist in the first place. So these ideas can be disseminated amongst the general population for free. And now we have this amazing new invention called the internet where we can do this exponentially more faster and efficiently, but because, it's all about the profits. And I know I'm harping on about this, but don't ever let anyone tell you this shit isn't just about corporate profits. That's all this is about.
I think if the Authors Guild were to have a solution for this, they would have worked with the Internet Archive directly to find out a good compromise. What the publishers did is try to take this and set a precedent to hurt a lot more than just the Internet Archive. And it's very, very fucking disgusting. It is so just to take advantage of this decision. It is just so bizarrely.
Right. Every single day, big tech corporations and just corporations in general consolidate more and more power over the internet. And this is just another step in taking away the free resources people can use, you know. Like I said, archive.org is the backbone of the internet.
100%. This, I mean, who cares about this podcast? But this podcast wouldn't exist without the Internet Archive. A lot of videos wouldn't exist without the Internet Archive. I probably wouldn't.
I've used it so many times. I mean, it's not even like the main resource I use, but it's always been there for me. And there's always been so many things that I've been able to find just archived there. And even like, my videos are archived on there somewhere. Just like people care to like archive things on there. And I don't know, it does give me a little bit of existential dread to even imagine what the internet would be like without it. Again, not to be overly dramatic. I know it's not going away tomorrow, but if we don't do something when these steps are taken against it every step of the way, we're paving the way for that to be the case.
The Internet Archive says it will continue acting as a library in other ways despite the decision. This case does not challenge many of the services we provide with digitized books, including the interlibrary loan, citation linking, access for the print disabled, text and data mining, purchasing ebooks, and ongoing donation and preservation of books. So this isn't the end of the story, but it is a very, very unfortunate loss.
Right. I guess we'll keep you up to date if any new major lawsuits or happenings related to the Internet Archive go down. We'll be happy to talk about them and complain about them.
Yeah. Copyright online, you're talking about how corporations are getting more and more power online. It is more true than people realize yet, because AI is now being used with these DMCA systems, which, by the way, the DMCA itself isn't amazing. Copyright holders have been attempting to repeal the objectivity of like social media platforms. So right now, the way it functions is that I'm going to go back to the AI thing in a sec. But right now, the way things function is that users are responsible for violating copyright, not the platform. So if I post a full song for you to listen to on Twitter, I get the copyright claim, right? Not Twitter. They're not going to shut down from people claiming they're a piracy website. Corporations have been trying to slowly unwork that more and more.
Right,
okay?
the safe harbor attribute or whatever it's called. Yeah, it's kind of a really, really important aspect. And yeah, they would love to take that away. That was a huge deal on YouTube back in the day.
This is about Section 230. Section 230 has been continuously under threat for years. I think it is still under threat to this day. There was an article last month from Vox about it seems. So if you care about the ability for the internet to be the way it is right now, even if you fucking hate what it's become, you hate how annoying it's become or whatever.
It could always get worse.
Yeah,
it could always get worse.
Get worse. Imagine if the DMCA was worse. Imagine if copyright protections was worse. If someone could fuck up everything for everyone by uploading copyrighted material and just nuke it, because suddenly the web host is a publisher of that content. That's what they want. They want to expand it so they can really grip websites by the fucking balls. It's disgusting. And they're now combining that with AI so they can detect if you're using melodies from a pop song. They can detect even better. Like, you think pitch shifting is going to still fucking work, motherfucker?
I was going to say, like, not even talking about GPT-3, GPT-4. Like, we've had AI scanning videos on YouTube and music on like Twitch for a long time now, and it's already so oppressive that I hate it. It's going to get worse. It's going to get even. I mean, it's going to like.
Yeah, the AI is getting better. It's going to get worse.
The AI is getting better. The situation is going to get worse. If that wasn't clear, yeah, like the stuff we're doing now, it's going to be like kid shit compared to what they do. Like how would you feel like every time you post a meme, you know, you normies and your memes and your gifs or whatever the hell, like anytime you post any like The Office gif, like before you even can upload it, like it'll be scanned by an AI. It'll be detected that it's a copyrighted show and it'll get like blocked. That's the kind of thing that can happen. Okay, it's not even like science fiction to think about that.
It's such an important aspect, I think, to think about. Everyone likes a meme, some kind of meme. And what is a meme? What is our idea of one? It is so correlative with pop culture, with like this amalgamation of our consciousness as like a public. Like, okay, like YouTube poops. What the fuck were those? We like The Simpsons. We like all these stupid old like weird cringe games. Let's put them all together and make just some crazy shit, like mash it up with some copyrighted song. It was so emblematic of what creativity is like in a world without copyright, you know? And you don't even have to be a copyright abolitionist to see how interesting that is, of like memes. Memes exist in this situation where no one really cares about their copyright. But imagine if they did. Imagine if you had to suddenly think about if this image of like a fucking screenshot from the Mario movie trailer with impact text, like fucking saying some dumb shit over it, was going to get you put in prison or like get you liable for copyright infringement. That is what Twitter would have to worry about if Section 230 was revoked. And again, just going back to think about what internet culture is like today, where it's so derivative of all these things we remember, but in a way that's unique, and it adapts and transforms, and it turns into all these new things, all these genres of music that rely on sampling and the transformation of samples. Art is derivative. The whole point of copyright was to acknowledge that point. That's why they introduced fair use into it, because art intrinsically is derivative. And although copyright was made to help artists, it was supposed to continue facilitating more and more art. And so when you see a decision like this, when you see people try to get rid of Section 230, when you see the fucking book publishers trying to prevent information from accessing the public more easily, when you see these greedy ass fucking institutions trying to lock people out of reading studies and research, that should tell you something about where our system is going, okay? Because it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse, and it can get a lot fucking worse.
Look, NBC would love to be charging you money for paying for like Office meme packs, okay? Like, I'm just saying, people don't even understand how like this would affect them or whatever. Like, I'm telling you, it could get so much worse, guys. You seriously don't even understand. Appreciate, I'm not even trying to be doom. I'm just saying appreciate the internet we have now for all its faults, because it could be so much more restrictive than it currently is. Like, we have such a laissez-faire attitude with like people just take shit off Google image search, post it on Facebook, on Twitter, like without even caring about the image copyright holder. Like that literally, it's not always going to be that way necessarily, is all I'm going to say. Because like you were saying earlier, like you can't just, like, the idea of YouTube poop, like as a genre, could never exist in the modern day just because of how much like stuff that's too remixed is getting censored or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's hard to explain.
I need to clarify, because it makes it sound like if you repeal Section 230, copyright and fair use intrinsically changes. That's not what I'm trying to say.
What happens is just that these hosts are going to be held liable, so they're going to start cracking down like crazy. It's not that like
fair use is very protective. The reason why DMCA sucks though is because platforms like YouTube have to be proactive to avoid responsibility. Now imagine that. It's 10 times worse.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, what we're seeing right now with how strict these guidelines are on these corporate websites, that's the hands-off approach. Like, if they were more liable, if they were directly liable for everything you posted, like, step one, 4chan would be shut down instantly because, there's no way no one wants to be held liable for everything that gets posted on that site. You know what I mean? It's like, it would just be so bad for the internet as a whole. Like, it's incredible to think about just, like, how different it could be. I don't know. I don't even know how, likely that this is to get repealed, but just thinking about it it's scary. It's a scary thought.
Yeah. Fuck. This will be an after. So this turned into kind of just another episode.
Just another Bernie ranting. I was going to cut you off and be like, settle down, Beavis. There's only so much we can do.
Fuck. Do you want to talk about anything else? There's one thing that's funny. Maybe lighthearted thing to end
bring it
on.
up. Sure.
Okay. Completely, totally different subject. But you mentioned 4chan and it's popped up in my mind. Did you see the video of the 4chaner getting arrested in his basement?
Oh yeah, you can't use the in Minecraft excuse anymore for death threats, guys. I don't even know how that worked for so long in the first place. I'm sure it's just because they weren't any specific cases like that. But
he went on 4chan and he threatened a specific sheriff, I think a local sheriff, and he said he wanted to kill him in Minecraft, and then they arrested him, and there's a video of it on YouTube now, and it's so weirdly.
You guys, you got to be careful with your free speech out there because some people are being dumbasses
is
with
not
it.
A joke, okay? You really do need to be careful, okay?
Right. Some people are they're a little lax with the kind of shit they'll say. This is why I was biting my tongue in the first part of this episode, because I was like, I don't want to say anything that's going to get the feds upset at me because
Take it from me. I got I got visited by the FBI guys. Take it from me. It's not fun. They were a little more pissed off because it was during the government shutdown, but it's not fun.
Hey, if you want to hear that fun story, we'll save it for another bonus episode. That one will be paywalled. So just to preserve Bernie's reputation.
I've explained it before publicly. There was a really funny thing that happened like right after. So this happened in like probably 2020. No, in 2019, early 2019. And I was explaining the story to a friend and they were accidentally streaming. And so they looked at the channel like, oh my God, wait, we're streaming? And then they looked in the chat and everyone's like, this guy's weird.
That's hilarious.
Like,
accidentally leaked.
Yeah, well, it was never like a private ordeal, but
right.
Geez, they were fucking pissed off. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, we'll explain this later. We'll explain how Turkey Tom got roped in, and a few other people.
I mean, I was saying it almost as a joke, but that would be kind of an interesting episode. But yeah, I hope you guys liked our first bonus episode about just bitching about the Internet Archive. I mean, this was literally just like a spur of the moment. I mean, we're going to talk about this. We might as well record it. And then it sort of morphed into a mini episode because Bernie kept finding articles and stuff. But yeah, we figured, hey, might as well. If you want to hear it, you can hear it. If you don't want to hear it, then too bad. You already listened to it, you dumb fuck.